Live streaming is on.
Hey, I got stuff coming in, although
Are we streaming?
we are
Excellent.
we are streaming now. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we are the Pennsylvania Pirate Party
+1.
plus one from the USPP/Indiana, right? That's
Yes,
right. Indiana Pirate
Not
Party.
not Iowa. A lot of people have accidentally thought that I am from Iowa, which I understand. They're both irrelevant Midwestern states that start with I. I never get Illinois though, which is I don't. I'm thankful for that.
That's not, I have a friend that moved to Illinois, and that's one of the last states I'd want to move to personally. It's I mean, anyway.
I mean, our Illinois Pirates, a lot of them, naturally they live up in the Chicagoland area, and they're like, yeah, man, this is the best city in the world and the best state in the world. You got to come. You got to understand it. You have to be part of the culture. I'm just like, the Illinois I know is the place across the river from Indiana that is somehow even more barren and desolate than Indiana is. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think I've ever seen an Illinoisian, a real live one in my life. Frankly, I just don't think the state exists past Chicago. I think there's some kind of government ruse going on there.
Is that the new conspiracy theory?
Illinois doesn't exist?
Illinois doesn't exist?
Illinois is actually birds.
It's just birds. It's all birds. All right. So now we've gone past all of that silliness. We are here with our series of Pirate 101. We did what is the Pirate Party? And we did about an hour on that last week. And this week we wanted to talk about what's really at the core of the Pirate Party, and what I think is really at the core of the Pirate Party. One of the most important parts, and that's the 8 core values. And we forgot to introduce ourselves because we were just having technical difficulties and cracking each other up. I am Drew Bingaman. I am one of the what do we want to call it? Co-organizers of the Pennsylvania Pirate Party. Johnny.
I'm John Robinson, another co-organizer of the Pennsylvania Pirate Party.
And AJ?
I am Anthony J, or AJ. I am the National Outreach Chair, which means that I do a lot of... Makes me sometimes like the official, unofficial PR person until we get someone specifically for PR, which means I am running around a lot and making all sorts of public-ish appearances, and this is one of them. So I'm really happy to be joined by 2 fantastic pirates in the state of Pennsylvania.
And we are glad to be joined by you because I just know you have a great passion for this stuff. So
absolutely.
So I don't know. Do you maybe have any background on the core values at all,
so,
AJ?
I a little bit. I can ramble for a little bit about them off the top of my head, or at least about the history.
Yeah.
So the core values, from the way I understand them, essentially came up wholly organically in the beginning stages of the movement as pirates tried to figure out what they were about, other than all the IP stuff that, that's where the name came from. And I think that you could guess that much, even if you don't know anything about the party. Rick Falkvinge, one of the people that, first started the movement, he started the Swedish Pirate Party. At some point, he tried to sit everyone down and really write down and really try and hammer out, okay, what is it that this movement has become? What are all of the other things that we believe in? That's my understanding. I could be wrong about a few details here and there, but that's the story that I understand, that I got. What they came up with were these 8 core values, and they are privacy, transparency. This one's a bit of a weird name. It's TICS. We'll get into what that means. Humanism, diversity, resilience, the swarm economy, and quality legislation. And the main idea is that all of these values come from an initial place that we call empowerment, which is this idea of everybody has a voice, we need to assume good faith when we engage with one another and take part in the political process.
Awesome. Well, there's a little bit of background, which I don't know that I knew much of. So I guess we might as well just go one by one, and I have them in this order. Number 1, we stand for open culture. No one should have the power to prevent the free exchange of expression of ideas, tools, or works.
Yeah, that's that's the TICS one. So if I can
ahead.
explain what TICS stands for, because
Yeah.
I'm reading off of like the old document that Falkbench has on his website. TICS is the free exchange of, I believe it's technology, information, culture, knowledge, and sentiments. So that's, you know, really this idea of the free exchange of culture and all things related, that it shouldn't be, these aren't things people should own, and these aren't things people should try and control.
This is your modern idea of what a modern pirate is in the 21st century. Like the free information exchange. All information should be free. While we do have a wealth of human knowledge online and freely available, it's not everything. So we believe that everything should be freely available. And that's where we get into things like pushing for getting rid of the patent system, and reforms on. Oh my God, I just went blank. Reforms on. I'm sorry.
Intellectual property and copyright.
Intellectual property and copyright. Thank you, Johnny. That you saved me there.
Yeah.
I was drowning a little bit. I slipped and fell into the ocean. So yeah, do either of you guys have anything that you want to maybe expand or on that?
I will say, because it's kind of a common misconception, a lot of pirates aren't necessarily completely, totally against the idea of IP. At least a lot of modern ones. You know, I think in the beginning, like 2006, I think maybe the pirate movement was a little bit more radical on this point. But now I think we've taken a little bit more of a nuanced position. It's really just simply that a legitimate ethical system of intellectual property looks so different from what we currently have that the current system just needs to be abolished and we need to start over.
100-year trademarks or 100-year, yeah, no, I'm with you. And patents are just straight up terrible. I just think patents are terrible.
Yeah. Right now, I think it might be on our website. We have an idea for what this might look like. Oh yeah, here on our website. Limit the copyright to 5 years for electronic media and 14 years for tangible objects. Make sure that all non-commercial copying, sharing, and remixing are legal, and ban DRM software. So that's an example of, the kind of, more liberal, more lax copyright systems that pirates would fight for. We still think that, you should get credit for your ideas naturally, and maybe to some extent you should be able to profit off of that. But this idea of these, never-ending copyrights that, in theory are supposed to expire, but in practice can just be renewed and renewed and renewed with enough lobbying power, all of that needs to go.
What I love about this is I get to be the conservative one here. Actually, lack of nuance. I'm going to harken back to the old school burn all intellectual property.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's not like you're going to make any enemies in the pirate party with that stance.
No. My take on the intellectual property thing is that copyrights are overly broad. So like free use of things is not being handled properly in my estimation. Like, I mean, just look at YouTube copyright strikes. I mean, it looks like now that the police are using copyrighted music, playing copyrighted music when people are recording them, so that they can't put them on, so they can't put them online, they'll get taken down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like what kind of world do we live in where, all transformative content just like isn't completely legal? Like shouldn't that be one thing we should agree on? Like if you remix something in any way, there should be no argument as to whether or not that's yours, or if a song is playing in the background. I mean, that's not even that's not even the original creator's content at that point.
Mhm.
It's become it's become something new. So that's really, I think, the first thing that pirates would like to do is get rid of this idea that transformative content could ever be against copyright.
I agree with that. I mean, even it's really difficult to take a isn't essentially all art derivative to some extent.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like, I mean, even even when it comes to music, there are formulas for music, especially in certain genres where the songs are really not all that different. Yeah, sure, they have different lyrics, maybe, if they're that kind of song, but the overall progression, the setup, if we were letting music be patented, somebody would probably have like the patent on country music and make everybody pay them.
Oh, well, I mean, people get sued all the time in the pop music world for having songs that sound too similar to,
Yeah.
Other people's songs. And it's just a big coin flip as to how that suit's going to turn out, because all of the songs are basically the same chord progressions anyway. So why are people allowed to own chord progressions, basically? I mean,
Well, actually, they're not. Chord progressions.
They're not supposed to.
They're not supposed to. Okay.
They're not supposed to. But there's some sketchy court cases I've seen in that regard, if I recall correctly. I don't want to, spread misinformation if I'm remembering something wrong, but I'm pretty sure musicians have gotten away with suing for some really wacky things.
And it's usually actually, more than anybody, it's the large, either the record companies that have the lawyers, or it's somebody who is already rich and famous and has the power to fight those things, versus somebody that has just come along with their own works. And that, I have a TikTok channel and I see that all the time. I see people getting taken down for the things that aren't freely available to use on TikTok. If you get things in the background. That's the same thing with YouTube. I can't tell you how many YouTube channels that I watch that will be like, well, I can't play this for you because I'd get a copyright strike. And that is, to me, just stifling creativity for no real good reason. I just think there's just a better way, and it's just that these copyright, since the DCMA, we don't really do Napster anymore. That was the big thing that really kicked the music industry in the groin, and then they went just overboard with the copyright side of things. But moving on.
Yeah. Do we want to?
Oh, go ahead.
I do want us to move on because we have other stuff to get
more.
to. But before we move on, does anyone want to comment on like the information and knowledge side of this at all? Because this free culture thing doesn't just include our sentiments on copyright.
What they do to scientific and academic papers is reprehensible.
Yep.
Thought, leaving aside the basic thought that this is humanity's common inheritance, and how dare you try to put a restriction on learning new information like that. A lot of this supposedly copyrighted stuff was paid for through government money. It should be freely available because it was subsidized by the government. So yeah.
If I'm naturally, I don't know everything exactly about the funding model for papers. So again, I don't want to say anything that is too out of line or too incorrect, but it kind of makes you wonder if you're getting that money for a grant to do this why is it, you'd think it would be as simple as they get the funding, the researchers are compensated for their time to do the study, and that's the payment structure, right?
Mhm.
Where does we also have to have everyone who wants to know this information pay for it part come in? I mean, it usually just comes in with that's how the journal operates,
Yeah.
but it's still, it could definitely be better. And every academic I've talked to from all sorts of fields, from the arts to the humanities to the hard sciences, everyone I know that's an academic says, "Oh yeah, it could definitely be better," because they from their personal experience know they're not getting a lot of that money at the end of the day.
Right.
um, which is awful, because you'd think that if there's anything that we want to incentivize with every single possible incentive we could give someone, it would be the continuation of the arts and sciences and academia. But just a thought. But yes, we should move on.
A lot of I mean, so my bottom line is that a lot of these academic papers should not be behind a paywall. Just
Mhm.
just as a bottom line, those things should be published, and they should be published in places that, especially for people that are in academia, published in places that are easy to find. I don't know. That is another thing that I think really should be. It should be obvious. I mean,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, well, no wonder so many Americans are really confused on the prominent scientific issues of our time. They're not taught how to read papers that they have to spend $50 to read. Uh, maybe that's part of the issue there.
I think it is, and I think the other thing is too is then the accessibility to
Yeah,
papers.
yeah.
Because what we do is we end up relying on others to interpret those papers for
Yeah.
us, aka somebody in the toxic media, and then
Science
it gets
communicators, yeah.
yeah,
Which I think
yep.
there's definitely there's a very good role for science communicators. However, I think that they do work best when they can then go on, teach the average person how to read, interpret these papers, so they can see, the primary source for themselves. And there's just a lot that we can do in the way of encouraging that, because I think I basically said my point.
Johnny, you look like you had something to.
Well, some people might come back at this with saying, okay, yeah, the system isn't perfect, but it would take a lot to change it. Is it so bad now?
Well, everything can always be better.
Well, everything always is better, but cost benefit analysis and all that. What I don't think people understand is the horrendous state
Mhm.
of scientific research right now. I mean, it's just not working very well. Scientific research relies on being able to replicate experiments, right?
Mhm.
Someone does something, someone else does the same thing, they get the same results. Oh, yeah, there's agreement. That means this is reality. The ability to replicate experiments has been going down severely in modern science over, I don't know, the last, I guess, 10, 20, maybe even 30 or 40 years. I don't know if there's a direct causal smoking gun link between the restrictions on getting papers and the sharing of information and this phenomenon, but it certainly seems that it probably has something to do with it. We are making these little walled gardens of information and working very hard to get to it. And coincidentally, our science as a society, as a world society, is starting to suck. It's not good. We're not doing good science. And that scares the heck out of me, our inability to do good science. And I strongly suspect there is a connection between those two things. So if you're wondering, why should we invest the time and effort into reforming scientific paper intellectual property laws, is because we should have a well-functioning scientific community. And right now, we don't have that.
And here's the ultimate irony. The internet was created for that purpose, for scientific research and the sharing of information.
Yeah, well, why do you think people in 2006 were so upset about the direction that it was taken that they decided to found a political movement about it?
There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah. All
So-
right. We should probably move
we
on, but-
should. And that's a good one to spend a lot of time on,
Yeah.
though. It's sort of like the First Amendment. That's something you can spend a lot of time on. Number 2, we stand for transparency and openness.
Yep.
Government activity should not be hidden from the public. I think that one's pretty obvious, and I don't know that we need a lot of discussion on, but if anybody thinks that the government should actually be hiding things from the public, you probably don't belong in the pirate party.
No, it's
That's
for our
just-
best interest. What are you talking about? There
Yeah.
are some things that we can't comprehend and that we shouldn't know. I love when the government keeps secrets from me.
Yeah.
Though, to that point, to elaborate a little bit, because I think we'll get done with this one pretty quickly. The idea of having transparency in our institutions doesn't just apply to the top level of the legislative government or whatever. We think that it should apply to every organization that exists. If there's some kind of system or entity out there that is trying to either convince you that you should do something for them or does have power to make you do things, either way, you should be able to know what's going on, because in that situation you are essentially a social stakeholder of that organization, because your livelihood is to some extent on the line. So we believe that all systems and institutions, no matter what they are, should be as transparent as possible.
And I agree with that. You got anything for that, Johnny? Anything to
No,
add that we didn't really?
Like you said, it's fairly straightforward. Yes, we don't believe the government should keep secrets from us.
And we don't think big corporations either. Trade secrets are something that I can see an exception for, as long as they're not something like certain ingredients and products that are known to cause health problems or something like that. But when we talk about reforming the patent system, we the ultimate comeback is, well, how are people supposed to protect their trade secrets, the little tricks of the trade, and how I figured out how to build X, Y, or Z if I want to keep a somewhat hold on something that I invented. And that's where trade secrets come in. And I'm willing to let some corporations have some trade secrets, although again, nothing that would be harmful. Nothing that would consider anything harmful to the public, though.
Yeah, there are definitely small exceptions, especially while we still, live in the current world state that we do. Like I think now when we have all these, massive empires that really like the idea of going to war with each other all of the time, there's probably some use for the average citizen to not know absolutely everything about what all of them are doing, because then that would mean another empire could get their hands on the stuff, but ideally the end goal should be that we just don't have these massive empires that like to do that stuff.
I will give you that.
Yeah.
So now moving on, number 3, we stand for individual privacy. The amount of oppression in a society is inversely proportional to its privacy protections. Individuals must be free to make personal decisions that do not harm another person. I think this one is another one that's a pretty good self-explanatory point. We don't want the government. We don't want government spying on us for no reason. I think that's where the warrant system comes from. And that's been almost completely ignored in recent years, especially when it comes to electronic surveillance. This is one of my big ones personally. I really want to end government mass spying on people and government and corporate data mining on people. I mean, the corporate side is mostly irritating, but the government side is okay, I might have a flag next to my name in an FBI file because of of my involvement in certain political movements, which they have branded as anti-government over the past 20 years. But you know, if they think that I've committed a crime, they should investigate that with warrants.
Mm.
But since I haven't, as far as I know, committed any major crimes in that time, yeah, what do they need a file on me for?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
and I do want to point out that this point, it's simple, but it is twofold. On one angle, there's a very literal definition where it's just mass surveillance in the modern age has gone too far. On the other angle, we do like to rope in, individual autonomy and liberties with privacy. The idea is that it really is only your business what you do when it doesn't hurt anyone. So that's a pretty standard value for political parties like ours. But I think we have a unique take on it, is that we directly connect it with the idea of privacy. Why does the government even want to know your sexual orientation, say, to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, on the transparency point, I forgot. Pardon every single whistleblower. That's all.
Yeah. Whistleblowers are not criminals. I'm sorry. It's just period. End of story.
All right. Back to privacy.
Back to privacy. I think there is a very good reason for there to be. There's too. Let me just put it this way. There are too many people employed in knowing my business right now. Mm-hmm. There should not be a cottage industry based upon knowing every citizen's doing at every second of the day. And I will say that, I do use Google for a lot of things. And I know that's not a super piratey thing to do, but at the same time, I operate with a lot of transparency personally. So I know if I'm connected to the internet, if I'm connected to cyberspace, to whatever you want to call it now, it's because it's morphing into newer and brighter and
scarier.
What I want
to go to the metaverse.
Yeah, the metaverse. Scary thing.
By the way, when it comes to setting up the Pennsylvania Pirate Party social media presence in the metaverse, I'm officially calling not it.
Well, we are technically in the metaverse because we're on the Meta site, Facebook. So, which is just weird. I still can't deal with that being called Meta. But anyways,
I refuse to call the company Meta just out of protest.
Yeah. I just
all right.
Not there yet with that. But yeah, privacy really. There's just I mean, for not just the government, but the advertising agencies and the political operatives, it's
the banks. Let's have some privacy. Let's have some privacy
credit
with our credit and banking system.
Yeah. So all of that. There should not be massive industries built up around personal information, and it shouldn't be valuable. The what is out there should not be valuable. It shouldn't be traded. And if somebody's going to sell my personal information, that's mine. And I should be the one that gets compensated for that, not some faceless corporation.
Yeah. A point on privacy before we move on that I just remembered and I do want to bring up. The advertising and sort of PR and political side of things can sometimes really be the most egregious. I know a little bit about this just because I am studying, like professional communications right now as my career path. You can totally, an agency like this can totally just decide, hey, I want to know the activity of everyone who goes to this church or is part of this, works at this business. They can, geofence that area, and everyone, get, the IP addresses of everyone's phones and everything, from that area, and then track what you like on Facebook from that point forward. Mm-hmm. So they can get a lot of demographic data without even knowing who you are. Mm-hmm. And it's really scary. The advertising side of things it's just wacky.
It is, and everybody knows about it if they've ever
Yeah.
looked up something or said something to Google, or even just had a conversation in their home where they have one of those things listening,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden you start getting advertisements like crazy about something.
My
Yeah.
favorite is me and my girlfriend were at my place, both on our computers. She looked up something to buy on her computer. Days later, she's gone back to her place. I go to my computer. The ad that she went for is on my computer.
Mhm.
They make a lot of connections there.
Yeah, there is a famous story about I believe it was Target had a system where when you use, they have their little red card that you
Yeah.
connect to your debit. Do you connect
Mhm.
to your debit card? So they're able to track all of your purchases.
Okay.
And Target predicted that by the purchases that this young teenage girl was making,
Oh yeah, this one.
that she was pregnant, and they started sending coupons to her home, where apparently was found by her parents, and they through those things they questioned her and found out that yes, she was pregnant. And I don't know if they sued Target, but it's just a famous case.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And just through the data of what she was buying
Mhm.
and what other people like her in her age group bought, this you ever see on Amazon where they say other people have bought X, Y, and Z when you bought this. That sort of data all is just it's all scary. It's all goofy. It's all a little bit
Well,
too much.
I think that the real wacky thing about it, though, and the real scary part about it, is that the information that they actually have that gets all these end results usually isn't even that egregious. Like, they don't, the algorithms, the things that do that, they don't really know anything about you except vague demographic categories, and what they do have are trivial things like what you've bought, what cookies you have, or whatever. Like real trivial stuff. Your person really isn't being all of that violated. However, with that trivial information, the algorithms are just so good that they can come up with all of these wacky results again without even really sometimes without even really identifying you as a person or an entity.
Right.
It's just a few numbers over here, a few numbers over there, boom. So in some extent, I think that it's weird because it's a little bit less scary than sort of what the general public consensus thinks. They're like, oh yeah, my Google agent is listening to me or whatever, the stuff like that. But I think the fact that it's less scary than what people think is going on is a little more scary, because it's like, oh no, they do all of that stuff without listening in on you or anything. Their algorithms are just that good.
Yeah, the models that they create
Yeah.
based on those small things that can nail you as a personality very
Yeah, yeah.
closely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was privacy. That was number 3. Number 4, we are anti-monopoly.
Yep.
No monopoly should be able to prevent works, tools, or ideas from being freely used, expressed, exchanged, recombined, or taught, nor violate individual privacy or human rights. A creator's right to be compensated for their work or idea is only acceptable within these limitations.
Okay.
I don't know if we're following the pirate wheel. What page are you using right now?
I am using the U.S. Pirate Party core values page.
Where is that?
It's under our name and values. And I have it printed out, so I can't tell you the exact URL.
That's all right. I was going off the pirate wheel. We can roll with this too, but the 8 things that I listed will be slightly different. Because to me, this falls in with ticks, right? Maybe a little bit of humanism and a little bit of swarm economy, and I guess a little bit of resilience too.
Yeah, to me, monopoly is only a true thing.
We have a special relation with that word coming from the libertarians.
Yeah. Monopoly is only a thing in the presence of government. In the absence of government, there can be no true monopolies. Even if somebody is a very powerful corporation, there is nothing stopping somebody from competing with them. So
government.
Except government. So government puts in regulations that actually grant monopoly. And I don't like that. I think competition is best. So,
and I think that I'm trying to figure out what I want to add to this, because I think the general pirate consensus and understanding of monopolies, because we also use this word to refer to more than just business. It's everything. There shouldn't be a monopoly on anything. So I'd have to think about what the general pirate response might be, and what we'd want to say on that issue, as opposed to pirates, this is the libertarian thing that kind of fits it, but maybe we could come back to that. Maybe we could make it part of a later Pirate 101, but I don't know if I have.
Yeah, I mean, we can,
but I don't know if I have like a seasoned pirate take to add on to it, unfortunately.
I think there is probably a case to be made for really going in deep dives on a lot of these.
Yeah.
So, we will save those for later shows, ladies and gentlemen. But I think the bottom line is that monopolies in general are bad. And that includes not just government monopolies, but monopolies in business, and monopolies on ideas.
Yeah.
So all of those things are bad, and they limit creativity, they limit innovation, and they limit choice, which all those things are bad. So
can I spin this into a segment about the pirate value of resilience?
Sure.
So I have great faith in you.
Yep. So pirates, one of our favorite catchy buzzwords when it comes to the core value document I'm using, which is the pirate wheel, which is what Falkvinge cobbled together. We list this idea of resilience, which is basically the idea that things should be decentralized. There should be one point of failure in a society, and there should be no social monopolies on anything. So essentially, the idea is that we should not run into any situation where, if something is like, we just don't like something, or if some kind of system or institution sucks, or this or this or that, nobody should ever run into a situation where they only have one option. They should always have multiple options to choose from, because what you end up in this situation where you have a monopoly on anything is, well, if it sucks or if it breaks, well, sorry, everyday person, there is nothing you can do about it. You don't get any other option.
That's where too big to fail comes in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing should be too big to fail in society.
That's right. Yeah. We do, as pirates, we do accept the risk of failure and know that is an option. I think the other thing with this is a lot of the preppers have a saying, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So if you only have, one flashlight or one fire starter or one, that might get you through a little bit, but if you have to go any amount of time, you are eventually going to need that backup.
Yeah. So, I actually just thought of an interesting point that I could use to sort of, I guess, illustrate the difference between pirate beliefs and the libertarian beliefs, and where we agree, differ, is, I guess, the idea of, I think pirates would say competition in this resilience is okay, but what we really want to move to is a peaceful coexistence between these multiple different things that want to do the same thing.
Co-opetition.
Co-opetition, I like that.
Co-opetition. It's actually a word that one of the video games I play it has. You are cooperating to a goal, but you compete for the special things, more or less.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's that goes back to the friendly competition type of thing instead of super ultra cutthroat corporate warfare type of a thing.
Yeah. No,
So-
we want to, really build a world that incentivizes this idea of there should always be multiple options for everything, multiple options for how to live your life, multiple options for, where and how you get your toilet paper. I that's a weird example, but that's what I thought of. Multiple ways you can do everything, which I think ties into a lot of our other pirate values. But really, that's the idea of this whole resilience thing. And I do think that the resilience thing is where we get the anti-monopoly sentiment.
So number 5,
Yeah.
which is the next one on the uspirates.org page for values and name, is we stand for individuals over institutions. Universal human rights apply only to human beings and not to corporations, limited liability organizations, or other group entities. And coming from a libertarian perspective, a libertarian background, this just makes total sense to me. And I've always been one who is not a big fan of big corporations. I mean, there are some, so, and that's it. I am not a big fan of any large institution because I feel that once any organization gets to a certain size, and it's going to depend, there's so many things it's going to depend on, but once it gets to a certain size, efficiency is lost, transparency is lost, and corruption starts to sink in. And the rot of society across the board, whether it's nonprofits, corporations, or government, all of those things, once they're large, it's very easy for that rot to set in. And I think you can look almost anywhere and find it.
Yeah.
So I like to keep things small and manageable.
Yeah. If that ends up lining up with a point over here, I can bring us back to it. But I think you said that pretty well, so we can just move on and see where this takes us.
Anything? You got anything there, John? I know you agreed with me, but
Okay.
Obviously, people should have primacy over institutions, definitely. I do think this also ties into the discussions of this is what comes to my mind is discussions of critical race theory and critical gender theory and critical theory in general that have been swirling about recently. That really is a investigation of institutions having power over individuals and how institutions, without the explicit consciousness of the people inside them, can affect individuals in all sorts of ways. And it's dangerous to not question our institutions, to not interrogate them ruthlessly, because they are ultimately built by individuals themselves. And they can have individual prejudices, individual failings, individual quirks built into them, baked into them, and then they're just set loose to replicate those prejudices and faults and quirks over and over again, far beyond the intention or life of the originators. So we have to not trust the wisdom of institutions as much as I think we are accustomed to doing. We depend upon our institutions to really, in a sense, know what's best for us. We depend upon academia to know what's best. We depend upon law and medicine and all that to know what's best. We have this unconscious thing. Well, they're the experts. They should know what's going on. They're individuals using systems built by individuals. It's individuals all the way down. So we should remember the individuals when it comes to institutions and just, take a second, everyone. This is dealing with actual person. Is this really how we want to deal with actual people?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you to clarify that point a little bit, because I'm not quite sure I'm tracking.
Sure. In what sense?
Like how we are like getting from critical theory to there, I guess.
Well, critical theory and critical.
Yeah. Well, I understand it, but I'm trying to figure out how all the parts are like, how you're connecting them here. What.
Well, let's take the police, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take the law. The law is an institution. As an institution, vastly more powerful than any corporation. Yeah. Vastly more ability to mess up our lives than any pharmaceutical company or anything like that. So we can't be too comfortable with the law getting things right. We can't be too comfortable with the law treating people as equal. We can't be too comfortable with the idea that the law will tend towards justice.
Oh, yeah, no. Now I totally get where you're going with it. Yeah. And I think that there's an important distinction here to be made in Pirate Values, which is, we love our knowledge, we love our education, so naturally we do want to support experts of all kinds in what we do, but we also want to assure that everyday people are equipped with the knowledge to understand what they're doing and, to be their own check and balance. Because right now they're not a very effective check and balance on if something does go wrong, because a lot of times they don't even necessarily know all the information about what's going on, and that ties into transparency, that ties into this, all across the board. So I do think that as pirates we kind of try and understand it for multiple perspectives.
And
absolutely, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
and while it's not expressly one of these 8 core values, I think everybody understands that pirates are naturally anti-authoritarian.
Oh, of course.
I'd
like to think that you can't hold all of these values and be an authoritarian.
Yeah, and that really goes to question authority. Mm-hmm. Questioning authority is a good thing. Questioning authority and trust but verify. Those two things go, I think go very well together.
The way I like to say it is distrusting something for no reason is just as dangerous as trusting something for no reason. You want to make sure that all of your trust is based on, some kind of the best empirical truth that you can utilize or that you.
That is a perfect segue into number 6. We are a post-ideological, values-based meritocracy. We place all options on the table. We choose a specific approach because the available evidence shows that it is the best way to promote our values. We do not make decisions based merely on tradition, popularity, authority, or political expediency. And I think that's where trust but verify comes in. A healthy skepticism of authority comes in. And really looking at the real merit of ideas, actions, and pretty much everything.
Yeah. And I think this ties into the pirate wheel value behind this is the idea of quality legislation, right? The idea that our ideas, our ideals, any ideological bent we take should all be based on the idea of we want to do what works, and we really want to, I've been in a lot of, political spaces, political movements over the years, but that sounds weird to say considering I'm 20. but, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I'd find groups of people that I kind of agree with, whether it be the LP or all this other stuff, because I was kind of an LP member for a little bit there. But my issue would always be, well, yeah, I like their ideas, but I feel like I got to them through, trying to really reason things out, and they got to them through finding like a set of political dogma that they really like. Same thing with more, like progressive and left-wing circles, which I've also tried to fit into because, I believe in a lot of those ideas too. And same thing there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So something I really appreciate about the Pirate Party is that we come to all of the same conclusions that a lot of these, freedom-minded people from various movements come to. But we've figured that out because it really is the right thing when you sit down and evaluate the facts, not because, someone just kind of told us that that's what we were supposed to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely examples in all the major political spheres of that kind of dogma that comes
Mhm.
from whether it's an influential writer, an economist, a political figure of some sort. I know there's still a lot of worship in the Republican Party
Yeah.
over Ronald Reagan, and in the LP circles, it's Ron Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, in certain circles in the LP, you can't go more than 30 seconds without hearing somebody take, invoke his name on something. You also have Rothbard
Yeah.
in the LP circles in the more anarchist type areas. Obviously in your socialist side of things, there's a lot of people bring in Lenin and Marx, and
I just want to have one conversation about workplace democracy without having to hear about Marx's opinion.
Well, what I love about it is if you have the conversation long enough, you're going to have two people arguing vehemently saying, Marx said this. No, Marx said this. You're going to have two Marx opinions.
Why don't we just leave it out of it? Why can't we talk about our own beliefs and our own values? Why do we have to constantly cite? And again, this goes towards everyone, whether or not it's people that like Marx that much or people that like Rothbard that much or, across the board. Why can't we as individuals just sit down and talk about what we believe? Why do we have to keep citing all these cool, shiny books we have on our shelves like there's some kind of holy scripture? I don't care what this guy said. I have an idea.
Right.
And I want to hear your ideas.
My advice is read it all.
Yeah.
And then come up with your own opinion.
Yeah,
and then stick with it, unless you get argued out of it. Because I see a lot of people that that say read so and so or read Marx, read Rothbard, read Ayn Rand, all those things. The people that were prolific in writing.
read Ayn Rand. Obviously.
I say read.
Read it all. Yeah. Read it all. Read everything that catches your interest,
Yeah,
whether that be because you think you might like it or because you think you might not like it. I think everyone should read as much of this political theory as possible. I just don't like this weird cult-like attitude that all this political theory creates.
Yeah.
And I do think it leads to something akin to dogma.
It does.
We can't do this because, cool guy X said no. Well, he's been dead for hundreds of years.
So the other side of that is so the other side of of this is that we've been talking about the people that idealize authors or significant political figures of the past or the current. What we also have is people right now who find their echo chambers.
Mhm.
In either through a mainstream media outlet like Fox or CNN or MSNBC, or through their in their social media, they find an echo chamber, and that it's not about the merits of the ideas. It's about being on team red, team blue, team green, team white, team black, team, whatever, team rainbow. And it's not about what makes sense. It's about being with whoever you consider to be with your peers, and
Right.
scoring points against the other team because they're evil.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's
that's
about
not the case.
it becomes way more about feeling accepted within your social group than it is about discovering truth. And as pirates,
Right.
we find that really dangerous when it comes to the science of trying to make people's lives better, which is what politics should be.
Absolutely. So we are at number 7 on my list. And this one, I think, is another pretty easy one to go through. We are egalitarian.
Oh,
Yes.
yep.
We
That
believe
ties
in.
Sorry.
Just got a quick sentence here. We believe in equality and a level playing field. We accept input from all sources, and we value all people equally. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
you know.
And that ties into here. It's phrased as humanism, but it's basically just the same thing. No trivial attribute about you should have any bearing on your rights. See, all of the stuff that you've heard in any other good movement. If you haven't heard this in any movement you've been a part of, you should probably get out of there. It's pretty self-explanatory, and this isn't something we want to compromise on. And it extends to. We take this idea of humanism, and again, we extend it to every category. We believe in the rule of law, the idea that the wealthy or the people in power, it extends to them too. They shouldn't be able to get away with things that we can't get away with. Everything should be even, everything should be equal. That's the only thing that I can add to this. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We want people to be judged on their actions and their merits, and not anything else.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Anything to throw in there, Johnny?
No, I mean, I'm not going to try to add nuance to egalitarian. That's
No.
pretty good.
I think that was a pretty good word that was chosen there. So the last thing is, and this is probably the most important one, is that number 8, we actively practice these values. We hold ourselves accountable to our own adherence to these principles. And that, number 8, to me, is what makes these core values the most important part of saying what is the political party, or what is the Pirate Party, and what do they stand for. More than anything else, you got to agree to these principles. You got to and really live by them. And if that's not something you want to do, then maybe you should reconsider whether you are a pirate. And I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that in a condescending way. Because I want us all to be pirates, and I want us all to bring pirate culture to the United States and the entire world, for that matter. But I also understand that not everybody is ready or willing to look at these 8 core values and say, "This works for me." So.
I know we're just the epitome of cool, which is why you want to join the Pirate Party, but you really do have to actually believe in the principles as well.
Yeah.
We understand, we're just so, cool and smart and hip with the times. Everyone wants to join. However, unfortunately, I know you authoritarians, you really want to join the Pirate Party because you know that, that your life would just be made so much better, but unfortunately, you are going to have to compromise on a few things. I'm sorry. All right. With that out of the way, if it's all right with you two, there are 2 things left on my list that I want to make sure we touch.
Sure,
that's
absolutely.
All right. The first one is pretty similar to humanism, but this one lists diversity. And again, it's kind of self-explanatory, but also I think there's more to it, and we have our own way of thinking about it. Essentially, the idea is just like how we don't want monopolies on institutions, and we don't want one single point of failure on anything else. To pirates, diversity sort of means this intersection between humanism and resilience, where not only should everyone be accepted for who they are, but also society is better, just generally better, if we are all allowed to pursue our own different paths in life, and we are all allowed to be who we are, and that creates a stronger, more resilient society in of itself. I once had someone call me a social anarchist as an insult, and I was like, I mean, if that just means that I don't want the government telling anyone else how to live their life, then yeah, sure. Sure, I'm a social anarchist. I'll wear that as a badge of pride. And that, it's really important that we don't restrict this. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to overlap with what we've already said about humanism and resilience, but I think it's worth talking about on its own merits.
Yeah.
Do either of you have anything to add to that?
I think you're right. I'm just remembering a quote from one of my.
Live streaming is on.
Okay. So, I think we are back.
Excellent.
Okay, so we ran into a 1 hour time limit, which we're going to be wrapping it up here pretty shortly. But I'll have to take that into consideration next time so that we kind of keep it under an hour, so we don't have this issue. But now that I'm having a better idea of what's going on with YouTube and how to keep an eye on it, I think we're good. All right. So you were covering
diversity.
Diversity.
There was a quote that
Terry, one of my favorite authors, Terry Pratchett, just alloys are stronger.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was worth waiting for all that, but still, I think.
And I think that's a good quote.
I think the other thing too is that term that I had said earlier, the coopetition.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea. Look, society should be mostly cooperative and a little bit competitive. And if we operate that way, we all mix together. We all do our things. Everybody has their strong suits, and they're so yeah.
I think there's so much, especially in kind of spaces like ours. There's a lot of debate over this stuff like, oh, should society be based around like the individual or the group and all this stuff. And what I like about the Pirate Party is I think we've sort of reached this conclusion is that if we build society right, we can kind of do it all. We can create a society of empowered individuals that work cooperatively together as groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the issue with that? I think that should sound great.
Yeah, it was so here, as using the pirate example, a ship, you cannot sail a pirate ship with one person alone. You need to have everybody do their part, and then everybody shares in the winnings, the booty at the end. And then it's all dependent, which everybody agrees to before they go out to sea.
And to use the example, Pirates of the Caribbean, bonus points if you can get the British government to do the heavy work for you.
Well, obviously. You had one more point there, AJ, on your pirate wheel.
Yes. Here we have it listed as the swarm economy.
Oh, yes.
Which
you've got to talk about the swarm economy.
It's interesting to break down. What I've kind of started leading with is, again, in sort of these circles like ours, these small L libertarian circles, there's, a lot of discourse and discussion around economics. And I think people usually view a lot of these economic ideas and theories and systems they've built up as like wildly different from one another. But again, I think something that pirates have discovered is that a lot of the time the core tenets are the same. I really don't think that there's so much different from what's usually kind of called like the libertarian right idea of this voluntary society, and the libertarian left. Again, I hate terms like this because I think they're sort of reductive, but I have to use them for this example. This idea of again, this kind of perfect mutualist, dare I say, socialist society where everyone gets along and shares their stuff or whatever. I think what we found in the Pirate Party is that at the end of the day, a lot of these ideas are kind of similar, and they're built on this idea that we should structure society in such a way where people are actively intentionally get helping each other grow and finding the best ways to meet each other's needs. So I've said a lot of stuff throughout this entire thing that I think sort of adds to that point. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I think that at the end of the day, a lot of this economic stuff is way more similar than it is different. And I think a lot of people's intentions are exactly the same. The swarm economy is a specific take on this that was made by the early pirates. There are places where you can read about it. It's really its own specific thing. But I think when we use the swarm economy in pirate circles, it's more this general idea of this, kind of syncretic libertarian economic philosophy that basically anyone interested in the Pirate Party could get behind, no matter what other secondary labels they assign themselves.
Okay.
So I'm still learning about the swarm economy. I like the idea of that. I do look at the when it comes to economics, I do lean a little bit. Well, I don't even know. The compass for me is really bad here. So the Nolan chart, the compass, however you want to put it, is really bad for me here. Because I do fall into some different categories. One, I do love the idea of the pirate share. Now, that's it's a profit sharing model. It's essentially what it is. It is a everybody gets a share, and certain positions get maybe a share and a half or 2 shares or whatever that turns out to be. But every person that's cooperating for that goal gets a share of the profits.
Yeah.
That to me is that's a core pirate value that goes back 500, 600, 700 years. And the democratic principles of the pirates of saying we're going to sit down and hash this out before we leave port, make sure that we elect a captain for this voyage, and if you guys don't like him, you don't have to necessarily string him up. You can vote him out. So the democracy of things in the pirate world, yes, you're talking about a relatively small group, which could be up to like several hundred, but it's still a very democratic. It's a profit sharing model. It's we're gonna nobody is going to be nobody's going to be left behind either. If you're part of our crew and you do your part and you do as you're asked and you agree to in the beginning, you get your share at the end.
Yeah.
And so those are classic pirate values, as you would say, or ancient pirate values, if you want to put it that way. And they all roll into the modern pirate party, in so many different places. But those are things that I really appreciate about the old school pirates. And I think they are a good example for us moving forward in the 21st century.
Yeah, we really do want to build, like all the other aspects of society that we want to build up. We want to build an economy that really works for, the everyday person, and an economic model and system that properly compensates you and really makes you feel like you're properly included in what's going on. And I think I think the neat thing about idea, kind of to go back to my previous point, the neat thing about ideas like the pirate share is, well, an idea like that again is basically already in all of these fancy theory books that people argue about from all across the political compass. And even though they all basically include principles like that, people are still like arguing about how different they are and how special their specific movement is, even though I don't know, I kind of see a lot of the same general ideas, like the pirate share, like the idea of bringing more democracy into things. I mean, I'm not super read up on every economist ever, or every political theorist ever. I'm not going to pretend that I am, but I think the great thing about the Pirate Party is if you don't really know your economic stance, except these general ideas that you think are cool, we're not going to ask you to make your entire political identity about economics, which anywhere else you're going to be asked to do.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Even Johnny and I can both attest to how the Libertarian Party has always been very hostile to libertarian socialists or libertarian communists, or I think the argument was that the reason there has never actually really been a communist nation because communism needs to be in an anarchist society.
That is a major argument that goes around.
That's an argument, and to me, and again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where I think that institutions can remain small. Looking at a communist ideal, you need everybody to buy in, right? And that can work in a commune situation, where in small village type groups where everybody agrees that everything goes to the middle and we all work for each other. I think like a lot of things with true anarchy, with full blown anarchy, like national or worldwide anarchy, I think the idea doesn't scale. I have problems where things don't scale, and but that's probably a topic for another day.
Yeah, maybe we have been.
We are a little over. We're gone over. I don't.
Hour and a half.
Yeah. We'll see if this see if it catches up to us. Hopefully it will save properly. And
I'm sure it will. I don't think we've had any problems when the USPP Jitsi kicks us out while we're in the middle of a meeting.
So, well, thank you, gentlemen. Do we have some ideas that we want to maybe go into a deep dive on something, maybe for our next episode? Any ideas?
Your idea about the pragmatics of some of the more wacky radical things, I think would be a good idea for an episode, because something we're also really about as pirates is we try to be pretty pragmatic. It goes into our whole evidence-based policy thing, and I do think that's another thing that really separates us from similar movements is we really try to work towards reasonable goals that can be accomplished in our lifetime. I think that would make a fun episode.
Anything you're thinking about, Johnny? Like something you'd like to really go a little more deep dive into?
Well, I do like the idea of going after the biggest achievable goals that we could think of. I that sounds like something we could discuss next time.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go for what goals can we achieve? What do we want to get to? Where do we want to be? Maybe, certain years down the road, if we're successful and actually get the pirate movement to be adopted by people. Obviously not everybody, because I don't ever expect everybody to become a pirate. But if the world in general can see some of these really great values and agree with them and really take them into society, where can we go? What can we see? Where can we go from there? That sounds like a good idea. I like it.
Yeah.
I like that. So that will be our next episode.
Sounds good.
And maybe same time, same bat channel.
Something like that.
Something like
Yeah.
that. If we're all free, we'll do it all at the same time.
Okay.
So, all right, gentlemen, thank you for joining me in this discussion, and thank you to anyone out there who has been viewing this or will view this in the future. It's been Pirates 101, episode 2, Core Values.
R.
R.